season on the farm. But Daniel, the defensive regression we've referenced on the show is emblematic of a much more troubling trend on the farm. Stanford just had its worst season since 2017 at 4-8. Sorry, since 2007 at 4-8. The Cardinal haven't won a conference title since 2015. They haven't won 10 games since 2016. They just lost a big game for the first time in a decade. The trends go on and on and on. So this pandemic-shortened season is weird and completely incomparable with other seasons, as evidenced by the fact that I really wanted to give Curtis Robinson 100 tackles. But if he did that, then he must be the Flash, because it would be impossible any other way. He would be superhuman. But this season, 6-game and hopefully 7-game regular season still feels really important to this program. Was last year just a blip, just a 4-8 blip on the radar of consistency, or is Stanford really at a program crossroads between being an average Pac-12 team and being a top contender in the Pac-12 season after season? Or alternatively, can we not even make statements like that in a 7-game season? Is this just too short and too strange to really make these kind of program analyses that we like to make on this show?
I absolutely think it's too short of a season to make anything, but we're going to do it anyways because that's what we do on the show. But more than that, I think because we've already crossed. I think Stanford had quietly crossed over in 2018, and it wasn't really talked about. And for this, I want to talk about the identity of the team. And this doesn't necessarily translate over to success immediately, but what I want to look at is Stanford from 2008 through 2017. There's 10 seasons there. In 9 of those seasons, they placed in the top 10 in Stanford program history in rushing yards. The only season that wasn't in the top 10 was 2014 when they finished 13. So they had 9 of their best rushing seasons ever in that span of 10 years. That was the identity of the team. And then in 2018, basically a complete reversal. Bryce Love was hurt. KJ Costello had the 4th most passing yards in program history. The 271 completions he had was 10th. The 424 passing attempts was tied for 7th. And then the same thing in 2019. They were down all the way to 1,266 rushing yards, where 2 years before that, they were up at 2,800. A massive drop. Completely changed the style of offense, and they had the 11th most passing yards, 4th most completions, and 3rd most passing attempts. So they completely transitioned, and that's why I'm saying they're on the other side of the road. They've crossed the train tracks. They may have looked both ways. I'm not really sure because it just happened and no one really noticed it while it was happening. And yes, in that time, Stanford went from a Pac-12 title appearance then to a 9-4 season, which was both above and below expectations, and then to last year, which was a shock at 4-8 that no one really saw coming. So did they cross over? Absolutely. This is not the Stanford team that we had seen in the past under the David Shaw era. Does that mean they're not going to find success? No, not at all. I think Stanford could honestly live with this passing era, but they just need to adjust to it. And so far, they haven't yet. So that's where they find themselves right now.
So you kind of answered it right at the end, but my immediate follow-up question is, can Stanford be a pass-first offense, a program that really trusts its passing game, win games for it, and still win Pac-12?
Yes. Do they have the guys for it right now? I'm not sure. Can you recruit to that and can you make that your identity? Absolutely, because we've seen so many other teams do it, right? We've seen so many pass-first offenses that are able to get the air raid, the whatever, to win the Pac-12. Are you going to get those athletes at Stanford? I'm not sure. Are they going to get it this year? I don't think so. I think the run-heavy offense plays into the intellectual brutality, plays into the physical style, plays into the shutdown defense of controlling the clock. That is David Shaw's bread and butter. So do I think they know how to ride that much easier to the Pac-12 title because that's what they've done in the past? Absolutely. But can it be done? Sure. Is David Shaw known as a stubborn head coach who said, I've won this way so many times, why should I change? And he's honestly earned that respect. So I don't know where they go, but it can happen. I don't know where it is right now.
I think you got to find that perfect medium. You got to have the intellectual brutality mentality with the modern strategy of throwing the ball all over the field, because I think that's how you win in 2020. If you're going to win any other way, then you have to recruit at an absolutely insane level on the offensive line. But the offensive line is an area that you can recruit at a average level and be a pretty good passing team. You don't have to have a dominant offensive line. And I'm not sure that Stanford can have a dominant offensive line in this modern recruiting era, because it's just getting harder and harder, and that position is getting valued higher and higher. And, if we see another class where Stanford signs 2 of the top tackles in the country, like they did in 2017 with Foster Sorrell and Walker Little, that conversation changes. Then you can be a run-first team. But the strength of this year's team is quarterback and wide receiver. And you know what they share that in common with? LSU won the last national championship. Alabama. Maybe you could argue Clemson, at least from the quarterback perspective. Oklahoma. A bunch of the top contenders in all of college football are wide receiver reliant. And no, Stanford is not anywhere close to those programs. But the point is, wide receiver is maybe the most important position group in college football these days. And I think that's a bold statement, but Barton Simmons of 24/7 Sports, one of my favorite college football commentators, he's a recruiting guru. He really believes in that if you want to look at what separates the top 5 programs from the top 15, top 20 programs, it's talent in that wide receiver room. And I think you could say the same thing about what separates the top of the Pac-12 from the middle of the Pac-12 is the talent in the wide receiver room, because do you have guys who can win one-on-one matchups, who can get you out of third, who can break big plays at any moment? And I'm not sure Stanford has that this season, but I suspect that they might. And I think when you combine Simi Fehoko, who is obviously a big play threat, had one of the highest yards per catch averages in the country last season, I think should build upon that. When you have Michael Wilson, who's a fantastic possession guy, who I think is a very good route runner, finds a way to get open. Connor Weddington, a good all-purpose guy. John Humphreys, maybe the next great jump ball target. Stanford has a lot of talent in their wide receiver room, and they have to play to that. But what they can't lose is that intellectual brutality mentality that built this program, starting with Jim Harbaugh. You still have to get good offensive line play, and you still have to be gritty and tough on defense. And that's what Stanford was missing in 2018. They had the passing attack. They had the offense to do it. They just simply could not keep up defensively. And last year, it all fell apart with injuries. And I'm inclined to say that was a blip. But right now, I think Stanford's closer to an 8-4 type team, that being about their average, than they are anywhere close to a 12-2 as 2015. And if I were to say it, I'd say they're closer to a 2019 type season, a 4-8 season, than they are to 2015 as well. The low side of the extremes is where Stanford's arrow is pointing. They can definitely bounce that back, but they have to lean in to their strengths, the strengths of this current roster. I just do not see this team as one that can play low possession, grounded up kind of football and win games. They're just not good enough defensively for that.
Absolutely. And they're going to have to rely on those wide receivers, and those wide receivers think they are that good. And I think a lot of it is going to have to be confidence in this season of just saying, game 1, we're going to be able to do it. But another thing I'm going to look at is the defense, which didn't have nearly enough takeaways compared to where they've been at in the past. Stanford is used to winning the turnover battle, winning the possession battle. Stanford's defense did not make those big plays last season. They didn't have those momentum swinging plays. And that's what I think they've really been talking about this offseason, and then we're going to see. We're going to have those sacks from Thomas Booker, right? We're going to start having those plays that start swinging the game, and then now you're really feeling it. Because that's a lot of that intellectual brutality mentality. That's a lot of saying, we're just going to beat you up front. We don't care what you're running. We're going to beat you, and you're going to have to take it. And same thing on offense, saying, we have these receivers. Let's just go out and chuck it. That's what they're going to have to do this year.
Absolutely. It is going to have to be both sides of the ball. I think that's the most important point to drill home, is that, yes, we talk a lot about the passing game and that being the key for Stanford this season, or at least what they're going to rely upon. But you're not going to do any better than 4-2, and probably you're going to be more like 3-3 if you are just a pass-heavy team. Then you're Washington State, at least Washington State under Mike Leach, and probably Nick Rolovich as well. But if you combine that with a defense that should be saltier this season for the reasons you just described, I think that you could look at a much better season, something where Stanford contends for a Pac-12 title. And Daniel,